We are so delighted to have you all here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kristen Fox. I am the Executive Director of Womentum.
Yay, Fox!
It's like, what, you can't hear me? Oh, let me get my notes here. We're so happy to have you here tonight. This is the second annual March Onward celebration of International Women's Day. And I'm so excited to share with you this wonderful panel of women and healthcare experts who are going to share their experience. For those of you who are not familiar with Womentum, we are a Jackson-based nonprofit whose mission is connecting and inspiring women to thrive as leaders. We do this through our signature Womentoring program, now in its 18th year. We also do that, yes. We also fulfill our mission through a series of public speakers and workshops, our annual Womentum Leadership Summit, and now March Onward in its second year. I wanted to thank the National Museum of Wildlife Art for hosting us in their beautiful facility tonight. And before I introduce my fellow moderator, I wanted to share a little bit about our topic for the evening. So you might be curious to know what diet culture has to do with leadership. Well, leadership requires a lot of us: growth, focus, and ability to make tough decisions. So how do aspiring leaders prepare for this step? Well, we need to be grounded in our values, we need to have confidence, and we need to have resilience. So tonight, we are focusing on how women thrive as leaders. Thrive means to prosper, to flourish, to become and continue to be successful, strong, and healthy. Thrive means reaching our highest potential. So tonight, we are going to talk about how diet culture holds us back from thriving. We wanted to share with you a definition of diet culture, which we will display on the screen. Before that, I did want to just share a little personal story with you all. For those of you who don't know me, my prior background was in banking, and I'd been thriving in that industry for about 13 years and had achieved a lot of success. However, the last 5 months of that career were quite stressful. And after an unexpected transition, I found myself taking some time to process this big change in my life. Fortunately, I was able to enjoy summer, biking, spending time with friends, and resting after the tumultuous days that had marked my last days on the job. Once I was hired as Womentum's Executive Director, I was thrilled to be chosen for this opportunity, and I felt rested and eager to jump into this new chapter. As I prepared for the Womentum Leadership Summit last fall, though, I realized that none of my work clothes fit anymore. I was suddenly not only nervous about being on stage for the first time, but I had to find clothes that fit. This threw me into a brief yet intense bout of self-doubt and judgment. Thanks to the wisdom and advice I learned from one of our panelists here tonight, I told myself that I couldn't be the leader that Womentum needed unless I could stop worrying about my weight and appearance. Spoiler, it doesn't matter. So tonight, I hope that the stories you hear will spark more conversations about how we can lift one another up and filter our attention to include fewer messages that we aren't good enough. Let's put our time, attention, and focus into the things that matter and stir our hearts. With that, I'd like to introduce Christine. She is a board member of Womentum and a former mentor. She is a graduate of Leadership Wyoming, a former board chair of the Jackson Hole Chamber of Commerce. She owns her own business, Haagen-Dazs, and is an amazing boss to her employees. She's also a skier, kayaker, hiker, world traveler, and an amazing friend. So please join me in welcoming Christine.
Wow, this is amazing, the turnout, and thank you, Mike's. And especially a shout out to the gentleman in the audience. It's brave of you to come, but that's awesome. And it's great to see too so many young people as well. And I just want to quick thank Elizabeth and Kristen, plus the board. I think this was kind of put together before I came onto the board. And to be able to have this type of presentation really means a lot to me. And hopefully you'll walk away from this taking a good look at where you're at in your life. I, like Kristen, I'm gonna share a little bit about myself. For 40 years, I had succumbed to the diet culture and listening to the anti-fat bias floating around and all those external messages thrown at me. From swim coaches, you need to lose weight to swim faster. One season we were even weighed every week and were shamed if we gained weight or didn't lose weight. From my mom, that is not for you, that's only for your brother. I got really good at sneaking food at that point. You should wear clothes that hide your belly. You don't need to eat that. From bullies, in 6th grade, I was called Sheen Bean the Fat Machine. As an adult, a customer in the store who loudly said, "It looks like she samples too much ice cream herself," when I offered her a taste of something. From a health insurance agent, if you can lose X amount of weight, I can get you a great deal on health insurance. The lack of clothing options. I just wanted to look like everybody else. And then there was Weight Watchers, Weight Loss Clinic, Nutrisystem, Atkins Diet, Whole 30, the hospital diet, the cabbage diet, paleo. I tried everything. I was nervous about going to the doctor and being told, well, just lose weight. All of your problems will go away. I knew all the food rules. Use a smaller plate, eat with the opposite hand. No processed food, no sugar, no wheat. Don't eat after a certain time at night. Don't worry, it's big print, so I don't have that much to go. Then there were the internal messages to myself. No one will take me seriously. People will think I'm lazy. I have no self-control. No one will date me at this size. I just need to lose some weight, and then a lot of us have probably finished that sentence. Just keep exercising. There was a year when I was doing Weight Watchers, I was so proud of myself because I exercised 363 days out of a year. And just knew something was wrong. And that's when I reached out to one of our panelists, Tanya, in 2019. I was pretty much at my wit's end. I was a little depressed, I was discouraged and frustrated. Even though I knew all the tricks of what I should do and shouldn't do, I could never keep the weight off, and I knew I was missing something important and needed to shift. With help, I came to realize that all those external and internal messages were wrong. What I needed to do was shift my relationship with food, exercise, and myself. I started to take a look at the different stresses in my life, which was really key for me, of looking at the stresses. Imagine this, it wasn't my business, employees, or sales that was stressing me out. It was the food choices I was making or not making. It was not exercising every day. And the guilt that I had was tremendous. I stressed over what I imagined others thought of me. I didn't have any confidence or belief in myself. And as I worked on myself, reading books, journaling, workbooks, meeting with Tanya, I took a real good look at myself, and I began to have a better relationship with food. I stopped weighing myself, I stopped counting calories. Kind of sounds scary, doesn't it? Exercise, I still exercise, and I exercise to move my body, to enjoy the movement, and to spend time with friends. So I have a better relationship now with myself. I gained confidence, I found myself, and I don't think I ever truly knew who I was until I stopped stressing over all the things I mentioned. I learned to have compassion for myself and started to love myself. What I weighed didn't matter. What mattered was me. I have a lot to offer, and my size does not matter. Kristen mentioned leadership, and if we don't know who we are or waste valuable time, money, worrying about what we eat, what others think of us, how can we help others? How can we be a valuable asset to our families and community by being ourselves? I know I would not be where I am today if I didn't take the time to work on myself and love me for who I am. I can now eat food with joy and not guilt. wear clothes and not worry about how I look, what people think of me. And I am dating the most amazing gentleman, and I was the one who reached out to him first. This is my story and my journey. These 4 ladies will share their stories and also some great information. We're not here to judge or criticize. We want you to listen with an open mind and get curious. We have been, I believe, showing the Brave Space guidelines for this evening, that they've hopefully been up on the screen. And maybe, what can you shift in your life? So next I would like to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Kelly Baxter, who is a family physician and just kind of a huge hope for me, and I know for others in this valley, of what healthcare for everybody should look like.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here tonight and to be a part of Womentum for the first time. In my job as a family medicine provider, I have heard thousands of stories, and I have been led to believe that most of us will likely experience some amount of shame, guilt, and emotional trauma about how our bodies look at some point in our lives. Tonight, we focus on diet culture and the idealization of thinness, but we could all meet again and again to discuss the impacts of other social pressures and biases that strongly impact our physical and mental health. I will be the first to admit that I grew up in a naturally thin body and that my life has been very privileged. I truly had no idea what other people, besides close friends and family, were going through until I started seeing patients in the clinic 8 years ago. I'm so deeply grateful for the lessons my patients have taught me, the most important of them being that behind every body's size, shape, color, and sexual identity, there is a story, and that any assumptions are often harmful and almost always wrong. This job reminds me every day how hard life can be and how resilient, adaptable, and brave people truly are. Our society has idealized thinness as a goal for all people, no matter their body type, ethnicity, genetics, health conditions, age. We have been taught to use this as a marker of health, wealth, beauty, and personal value. This belief system generates massive income for businesses who make money from fad diets, wellness plans, cleanses, medications, and surgeries. Because everybody is included, everyone is targeted, and it is never enough. Chronic dieting doesn't work for almost anyone. Statistically, greater than 2/3 of people will end up at the same or greater weight after a diet. This is because reducing calories and restricting types of foods increases your hunger and decreases your metabolism, your muscle mass, and your gut biodiversity, along with many other physiologic changes. When we lose weight, the body recognizes this as famine, and it will do everything it can to preserve and gain weight back. What diet culture doesn't tell people is that your body will continue to try to gain weight for about 2 years after you lose it. Many changes required to lose weight are extremely restrictive, often unhealthy, and typically not sustainable long term, leading to this cycle of weight gain after weight loss. In my practice, I have found that those who have tried the hardest and who have invested the most often end up the most harmed by diet culture through cyclic dieting. Almost daily, I hear stories reflecting emotional and physical trauma caused by chronic dieting in people of all body sizes and ages. It is from these stories that I have developed deep compassion for anyone who struggles with body image, especially those living in larger bodies and facing societal and medical biases every day. Sorry, this will take a minute. Between undergraduate, medical school, and residency, I spent 15 years training for this profession. During this time, however, I never received direct education about eating disorders and the harms that diet culture and weight bias can have on mental and physical health. It wasn't until I listened to my patients and learned their medical histories that I realized that my medical training, and likely that of others in this industry, was heavily weight biased, and that this can lead to worse medical care and health outcomes. I was never taught how hard it is to lose weight and to keep it off. It is so difficult that even Western medicine hasn't figured it out. We can do organ transplants and neurosurgery, yet we have not figured out how to consistently, safely, affordably, and sustainably help people lose weight. We are asking an impossible task of some people and then shaming them for not knowing how to do it on their own, on a budget, and on the whim of billions of dollars in marketing telling them that this diet, product, or medication is the solution. In trying to learn how to help my patients, I learned that I too had a problem. That the perfectionism that I cultivated to become a doctor had spread into all aspects of my life. In my own journey, I too had an ideal weight in mind, and I used this as a surrogate for having control. I'm okay if I maintain this weight. In my free time, I consumed countless books, podcasts, and documentaries on nutrition and the food industry, not realizing that I was getting less healthy with each change. I eliminated sugar, then most processed foods, then gluten, then dairy, and other inflammatory foods. If I couldn't find a food that fit these rules, I would skip the meal, and food prepping was usually too cumbersome with my very busy schedule. I was bred for thriving in the self-sacrificing environment of medical training from a young age. First by being a caregiver for my mother, and then for my sister, and now for my grandparents. In residency, I would work 28 hours straight with very few calories and little to no sleep. In the medical profession, we honor and idealize those who make the biggest sacrifices and work the longest hours, while criticizing those who also prioritize their families and their own health. How can you teach something to your patients that you were not taught? How can something that you do not allow yourself, and something that no one allows of you? By the time I was sick enough to realize I needed to change, the food restriction from trying to eat healthy had caused years of stress, fatigue, anxiety, insomnia, and a variety of gastrointestinal symptoms. I lost bone density and have experienced times of severe burnout from my training and from my career. The only reason I learned this lesson was through listening to and caring for my patients. I finally realized that the societal and industry messaging was hurting us both, and that ultimately my medical training was more of the problem than part of the solution. So I dug in. I sought out people who were providing the messaging that my patients and I needed. I found these women here, and I met other inspiring women in this community. I put in the work, I read different books, I let go of old beliefs, I learned and I still practice intuitive eating. I worked with a nutritionist and I added most foods back into my diet and in appropriate quantities. Within weeks, I had better energy, focus, sleep, and I saw a drastic reduction in anxiety. I reclaimed my right to be a healthy person that values self-care and compassion, and in return, this has cultivated an even deeper compassion for others. I worked hard to heal myself and to become a better medical provider for my patients. I only wish that I had learned this lesson 20 years ago. I'm here today to tell you that focus and intentions matter. By shifting focus away from the number on a scale, and instead placing it on other things like having more energy, building strength, preventing heart disease, reducing stress and anxiety, improving sleep, having better relationships. These are all better placed intentions when looking at your health. There is no specific weight or body mass index that I could give you that would ever cure depression, or prevent dementia, cancer, heart disease, or any other condition. It is never about a specific number on the scale, yet so many people have this ideal number in their head. That number is based on messaging that it has nothing to do with health. It is a social construct. The body mass index, or BMI, is an archaic and oversimplified tool used to categorize a person's body into underweight, normal, overweight, obese, and the even more cruel and offensive morbidly obese. It was not created for the purposes that it is used for today, and it should not be used to assume health and disease. It isn't a replacement for considering the individuality of every person. BMI will vary based on body composition, age, ethnicity, genetics, and so much more. For example, it doesn't consider muscle versus fat. People who have more muscle mass are frequently in the overweight category and will often express shame over this categorization, despite having worked so hard to build muscle. I have very healthy patients without any chronic diseases that fall into the obese category of BMI, and very sick patients with a low or normal BMI. BMI should not dictate treatment options, ability to get good health care, and treatment of that person. We all deserve respect and dignity when it comes to health care. Your worth, your intelligence, your kindness, your integrity, your impact on this world, none of these things are found in one body type over another, and they won't change by losing or gaining 20 pounds. You are beautiful, you are worthy, and you are enough just the way you are. If there's one thing we must all foster in ourselves and others, it is compassion. A good place for us all to start would be to stop commenting on other people's bodies. Good or bad, see what happens if you simply pay attention to the comments, the judgments, and the biases that come up in your mind when you think about yourself and others. How did we learn to be so critical? Where is this messaging coming from? What would happen if we offer ourselves and others compassion and take back our power?
Thank you. I have the pleasure to announce our next panelist, Tanya, who is an amazing nutritionist and health coach, and I've sent so many patients her way. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Kelly. No one is going to stand up at your funeral and say, she had a small waist and a great thigh gap. As a woman, former exercise professional, and eat this, not that nutrition coach, that could have been how I was remembered. My identity was health and wellness. And like most healthcare professionals, I was trained in the weight-centered model. My professional success, for the most part, used to be measured in pounds and inches lost. But after years of working in the fitness and nutrition fields, I saw the harm the diet industry, disguised as wellness, was perpetuating, and my part in it. Girls as young as 3 report body dissatisfaction and thin ideal internalization. Teens worry about the natural body weight increases during puberty. Prior to our weddings, many of us stress over food and exercise to fit into a dress size smaller than our actual bodies. Postpartum women feel pressured to get their pre-baby body back. Perimenopausal and menopausal women struggle with body changes that are natural with aging. The belief that there's a right way to have a body may burden us for a lifetime. Grandmothers refuse the homemade brownies from their granddaughters, choosing pleasureless, low-fat, sugar-free, 100-calorie Weight Watchers bars instead. Weight and appearance take a front seat in most of our lives, driving or crushing our self-confidence. We're literally, many of us, not participating in our own lives, opting out of important life events because we believe we don't look good or healthy enough. Maybe you have your own story. We've reached a point in history where nearly everybody is in some way affected by society's heightened focus on beauty, health, and weight. The emphasis on how we look and what we weigh has influenced the way most of us perceive and care for our bodies. The belief that our weight and what we see in the mirror equals our wellness and our worth are deeply ingrained in our culture, and we've been passing this down for generations. Few of us are at peace with our bodies, and I was one of them. After nutrition school, I obsessed over food in my body, only eating foods that one considers healthy and eliminating everything that's supposedly not. From carbs to grains, gluten, dairy, sugar, nightshades, even chocolate. There's a term for this called orthorexia. While not an official eating disorder, I learned that it was disordered eating. Food was purely about nutrients, not nourishment. I spent an exhausting amount of energy focused on eating and exercising perfectly. I was supposed to set example, a good example, right? I felt the pressure to walk the talk, look the part as a nutrition and exercise professional, and I was never more praised for looking healthy and fit, though I was underweight. What I saw in the mirror was never enough. There was always a flaw to be fixed. I didn't see my behaviors with food as problematic and harmful because they're normalized and encouraged in our weight-biased, perfectionist body culture. I believed that health and fitness only worked one way. I was wrong. That's just not how biodiversity works. Like Kelly's patients and their stories, I too learned from my clients. I had intimate conversations with them, witnessed tears from body dissatisfaction and failed diets, doing all the right things, or trying to, and who, like me, struggled with what they saw in the mirror. I felt out of integrity with the do no harm approach to healthcare. I immersed myself in research and learned something that really struck me. BMI, body mass index, was never intended to be an individual assessment tool, nor a way to determine health. Today, you wouldn't know it. The BMI was invented in the 1800s by a mathematician. All BMI tells us is your height to weight ratio. That's it. It doesn't consider actual health behaviors, not your mental health, not stress management, not physical activity, not nutrition, not your relationship with food, nor a history of disordered eating, not muscle mass, social connection, or sleep. Nada. BMI continues to classify people into categories, even though we know those labels are deeply problematic. They are stigmatizing and create shame and judgment. A large body of scientific evidence shows that modifiable behaviors, not your body weight, has the biggest impact on improving your health and longevity. But even if we can intellectually grasp that BMI is BS and that behaviors matter more, we have more work to do. We cannot deny that we live in a body hierarchy built on the belief there's a right way to have a body. The solution isn't to fix our bodies or even just to try harder to like what we see in the mirror. It's to dismantle what's driving it, the system that ranks some bodies as better than others. When we embrace the realities of being human and having a body, that system will crash. Shame researcher Brene Brown highlights the potential power we have over this body hierarchy. If every woman woke up and didn't hate what they saw in the mirror and stopped buying anything, there would be a faster collapse of the economy than the airlines after 9/11. It would be within 24 hours, the entire system. Yes, collectively, we are that powerful. We are not here on planet Earth to spend a heartbreaking amount of time, resources, and energy trying to control or mold our bodies. That's not the legacy I want to leave behind for future generations. I did my own personal work, and I continue to do the work, exploring my relationship with food in my postmenopausal body. I pursued education in intuitive eating, a personal and dynamic process that honors both physical and mental health. It gave me the tools to reject the diet mentality, make peace with food, and honor my health with gentle nutrition. The addition of foods, not rules or restriction. I reclaimed fitness. My attachment to an ideal body weight was a myth. There's powerful evidence that our bodies can be stronger, fitter, faster, and healthier at a different weight. I broke down my body biases and became a licensed B-body positive facilitator. I ditched the harmful success is pounds lost approach and support clients in taking back their power with whole health coaching without the diet culture BS. To shift towards celebrating what we can do in the world and develop our potential beyond our physical selves, we must acknowledge and embrace 4 body truths. The first, your body is supposed to look different. You were born with a unique body. Diversity is part of the human experience. Your body is not flawed or imperfect. It's normal for bodies to have body fat, cellulite, stretch marks, or any signs of being human and living your one precious life. Our culture will try to convince you otherwise. Remember, it's about profits, not wellness or worth. The second body truth, your body is supposed to change. Yet the ask is that we stop gaining weight after high school. The ask is that some of us spend 9 months growing a human and then immediately look like it never happened. The ask is that we defy biology by never showing visible signs of aging. That we make frantic efforts to achieve all of the above while acting like we actually don't care. It's exhausting just to hear this, isn't it? Bodies change for all kinds of reasons: injury, illness, just living. A changing body is only a problem if we believe our bodies are never supposed to change. The third body truth, your wellness is not your weight. Health comes in a variety of sizes and shapes. It's culture's false and narrow definitions of health and beauty that are the problem, not your body or what you see in the mirror. Health is multifaceted and complex. A true definition of health considers the whole you. Your personal story, health history, life stage, and all the factors that the BMI never considers. It includes your values, your priorities, what matters most to you, because that has a powerful effect on your well-being. And finally, the fourth body truth, you are more than a body. Let's live in our bodies versus judging them as if we were an outside observer. Your body is an instrument, a vehicle for your dreams, not an ornament. On the eve of International Women's Day, to further put things into perspective, I'd like you to answer 3 profound questions proposed by author Martha Beck. The first, how much did Florence Nightingale weigh when she founded modern nursing? Ready for the second one? How much did Rosa Parks weigh when she took a seat on that bus? How much did Malala weigh when she started writing about the lives of girls in Pakistan living under Taliban rule? You don't know? That's right, because it doesn't matter. Let's take back our power by embracing those 4 body truths. That's my invitation to each one of you tonight. You have more to offer this world that has nothing to do with your body. You have more to do than be weighed down by pretty or beautiful. You are a fiery heart and a wicked brain. Do not let your soul be defined by its shell. For however long we are on this planet, our bodies are where we live. Feeling connected to and at peace with them is crucial to your health, your happiness, and your well-being. Thank you. So now I have the privilege of passing the baton to the powerful and badass Eden Morris, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor.
The mountains brought me here, but the people keep me here. When I look across this audience, it's a reminder of why I fell in love with Jackson on my honeymoon in 2016. I made more friends in 1 week than I had in years. I just felt connected to this place and the spirit of this community. I'm originally from a small town on the border of Georgia and Tennessee, and I was such a homebody growing up. I thought I'd be living on my parents' property with a German Shepherd as my companion by now. Obviously, that's not what has happened, and the story of my life up until now is one that I look back on with awe. Everything I'm going to share with you tonight, everything I went through to get to where I am now, it all happened for me, not to me. It happened for me so I could be the leader I would have looked up to when I was a child. It all happened for me so I could be a leader to women of all ages. All of us have a story, whether that's the story that brought us to Jackson, or the story of who we are as women and men. When I think of my story, I think of a little girl in Kahana, Georgia, who loved her family, loved playing outside, loved animals, was so creative in many ways, and I think about all the events in her life that shaped her to the woman who's sitting in front of you today. Over the next few minutes, I will discuss some of those events and how I ended up spitting to some statistics that I never could have imagined as a little girl. Before I share my story with you, I want you to do something for me in your heads. Can you remember the first time someone made a body shaming or body affirming comment about your body? I was 8. Coaches discussed my body type and which sports and positions I was meant to play or which positions I wasn't meant to play before my body even fully developed. Can you remember the first time you felt ashamed of the body you're in or felt like you needed to change it to be accepted? I was 14, middle school. Can you remember the first time you learned there were foods that were good or bad, and you let those ideas dictate what or how you ate? I was 3. I ask these questions because for so many of us, these ideas and beliefs we have learned about our health and our identities, we learned them when we were very young. It takes time to unlearn them, to question why we believe these things about ourselves and our health in the first place. And it's okay if it does take time to unlearn and relearn, and to redefine how you value yourself and how you prioritize your health and well-being. The little girl that I was grew up to play college softball at Texas A&M University. If I was to describe how that experience went to you, I can simplify it down to 2 things my coach said to me that still live in my head. You don't look like the athlete I recruited. It was said to me the first week that I walked onto campus. You were a waste of investment. I wish I could have my money back. But you're on this team because you look good in the uniform and you represent the university well in our community. That was said to me my junior year. I look back now on all the things I was doing to my body in order to be this perfect athlete. I have so much compassion for that young woman. I would have done anything to please my coaches, to perform at the highest level, and to be a good representation of the name on my uniform. So much so that I abandoned the person underneath the uniform. I didn't know how to take care of her. I just knew how to manipulate her and the body she resided in to be what others wanted. Now I know that my disordered tendencies were centered around control. In a world where so many things felt out of control, I believed if I could control food in my body enough, manipulate the way I looked enough, everything would be okay. And no one would see the deep inner turmoil that I felt about so many things that I was afraid to discuss with my coaches and the rest of the athletic staff. When I look back on my career as an athlete, I fit perfectly into these statistics and definitions. The National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University found that 35% of collegiate female athletes and 10% of male athletes are at risk for anorexia. And 58% of female athletes versus 35% of male athletes are at risk for bulimia. Relative energy deficiency in sports, also known as REDS, a syndrome of impaired physiological physical and or psychological functioning experienced by female and male athletes that is caused by exposure to problematic, prolonged and or severe low energy availability, also known as underfueling or dieting. The detrimental outcomes include, but are not limited to, decreases in energy metabolism, reproductive function, musculoskeletal health, immunity, and cardiovascular health, which can all individually and synergistically lead to impaired well-being, increased injury risk, and decreased sports performance. 45 to 95% of female athletes are not meeting the current daily carbohydrate recommendations. Current literature estimates show that 80% of elite and pre-elite female athletes have at least one symptom of REDS that I just described to you. This town is full of elite and pre-elite female athletes. I think when we are experiencing these symptoms, it's very easy to say in our heads, what you're talking about doesn't apply to me. I was very good at defending all the things I was doing prior to my diagnosis with REDS. I could tell you, I'm just eating healthy. I'm avoiding processed foods. I'm eating clean. I'm just disciplined. I was described as the, quote, healthy one, unquote, on my team. I want to share with you the two biggest shifts in my life and career that have inspired me to continue the work that I do now when I wanted to give up more times than I can count. I was diagnosed with REDS at age 22. I went for an easy jog around my neighborhood and I fractured 3 bones in my left foot. A DEXA scan revealed that I had osteopenia, the precursor to osteoporosis. At the time, REDS was known as female athlete triad, which included bone mineral density issues, amenorrhea or absence of period, and disordered eating. In 2014, this definition was expanded to include male athletes, which is why it's now called relative energy deficiency in sport, and also includes mental health issues. When I think about all the things I used to believe and who I allowed myself to be influenced by, magazines, movies, celebrity gossip, and how we dissect their bodies, my mother and her own issues with food in her body, and coaches' comments and critiques about my own body, I had this perfect breeding ground for disordered behaviors to thrive and propagate in my head. At 22, I decided health had to be about more than eating clean, because that's what led to more food fear than ever, underfueling for years, and eventually chronic bone injuries I will never recover from. I decided I wanted something different for my life, my relationship with movement, and my relationship with my body. In 2022, I shifted away from weight-centric healthcare to weight-inclusive healthcare. When I describe my story to others, I even ask myself, how could you ever have taught intentional weight loss? It's what the market wants. It's what people have been taught to pay for. We've been taught that weight loss equals good and weight gain equals bad. But for me, to heal from REDS and to recover from a severe eating disorder, I had to overcome my fear of gaining weight. I had to actually gain a significant amount of weight to regain my period after it had been missing for over 3 years. I had to eat more in order for my body to have enough energy to produce reproductive hormones again. I had to rest for several months to let my body heal. I had to stop weighing myself. I had to stop tracking steps and other metrics, which is hard for an athlete since everything is measured. I had to face my food fears. I had to stop believing I was a good or a bad person based on what I ate or what my body looks like. Healing my relationship with food in my body, those were inside jobs, and that's why I became a certified intuitive eating counselor. Just like you as an individual are allowed to grow, change, and evolve as a human being, your body is also allowed to change, and it's meant to change. After hearing all of our stories tonight, I hope you walk away from this event with a new perspective on what defines our health. I hope you feel empowered to question the traditional ways health and wellness have been presented to you, especially in this community. You are more than a body. You are more than any number or metric you've been reduced to in your life. And those intangible parts of you are what people will remember about you at the end of your life. If you're an athlete or someone who moves your body on a regular basis, focus on feeling fit versus looking fit, because those are two separate pursuits. Focus on the views around you instead of the metrics on your watch. Focus on the gift that is moving your body in the Tetons. And please remember that your run or your ride still counts if you don't track it on Strava. And finally, a fueled body performs better in all phases of life. Food is fuel, but it's so much more than that. Food is meant to bring us joy, and if you ask me, joy is the most underrated nutrient. Thank you. It is my honor to introduce our final panelist of the evening, Mary Ryan, licensed clinical social worker and registered dietitian nutritionist.
Whew, wow, tough act to follow. All right, well, thank you all so much for being here. This is really incredible. And a special thanks to Womentum, especially Kristen and Elizabeth over there in the corner. It's been amazing. For not only for making this event happen, but for being enthusiastic and passionate participants as well. It's been incredible just putting all of this together. Sorry. We all realize what is at stake when women and girls feel disempowered by the topics we're discussing tonight. I also want to acknowledge that our focus tonight is women and girls as part of our International Women's Day celebration. However, the issues we are raising affect all genders. In fact, transgender individuals experience high rates of eating disorders, and each aspect of ourselves that society does not support, whether that's our race, gender, sexual preferences, and much more, compounds both physical and emotional struggles. So preparing for tonight was harder than I anticipated. I've given many presentations over the years related to tonight's topics. However, for this event, I will not be nestled into research statistics, clinical theories, or PowerPoint slides boasting evidence to support my beliefs. Instead, I will embrace the power of story, of vulnerability, and share parts of both my personal and professional stories and community with all of you. I believe the toxicity of diet culture in its various forms can be rejected and our personal power reclaimed together. My early experiences as a dietitian made my transition to psychotherapist a natural evolution. I realized early on that despite all my time spent learning about food, nutrients, and their links to health and disease, that the most important work I did with my clients was supporting them around behavior change. The exchange of knowledge is part of that process. However, if we cannot identify and work through barriers to change or connect with what motivates us, then all the knowledge in the world is not helpful. This realization is most obvious in my clients struggling with disordered eating and eating disorders. Clients who are intelligent, hardworking, perceptive, and talented, athletes, musicians, artists, professionals in various fields, and high-achieving students. Knowledge for these clients is not a problem. Many of them know more about the caloric and nutritional content of foods than I do. These clients help me see when healthy habits become harmful obsessions. They confirm my belief that dieting for weight loss does not work long-term for most people, and they show me the physical and psychological side effects of the dieting roller coaster firsthand. Chronic gastrointestinal problems, anxiety, depression, low energy, and ultimately, with each failed attempt to maintain weight loss, feelings of defeat and more body hatred. My clients taught me and continue to teach me about the many factors that make it hard to care for themselves from the inside out. They carry the burdens of diet culture, the harm from difficult life experiences. Some we would all recognize as traumatic, and others we may dismiss as insignificant, passing comments about their bodies, positive or negative, that are internalized and make them feel that their worth is tied to what their bodies look like, what is acceptable in a body, rather than who they are at their core. My clients taught me how well-intended family members, partners, medical and other health professionals, including dietitians and therapists, contribute to these internalized negative judgments about bodies. Bodies not being the right weight, shape, or size, food choices, or physical activity that isn't good enough, or preoccupations with healthy foods and exercise patterns that are so revered by others to the point that my clients feel trapped by perfectionistic goals, unable to stray by a few bites of something they consider unhealthy, or a day of rest without exercise, even when they're ill or injured. My clients helped me see my own disordered patterns during my teens and 20s, when my negative body image was at an all-time high, when my body was the place I put all of my fear, anger, shame, and guilt. Some of these feelings related to things beyond my control, like my parents' divorce and family problems with alcohol and mental illness. Some of these feelings related to my own acts of rebellion, my own struggles with depression, and the socially acceptable binge eating and drinking common among my peers in high school, college, and after college and resort communities. My clients inspire me to continue doing my own therapeutic work, understanding my own story, and to continue pursuing education and training related to the complex problems many of us face with food, weight, and body image. Like many of my clients, when I was young, I was often told I was too sensitive. My clients have shown me that sensitivity is a gift, even if they can't yet realize this in themselves. Their experiences remind me how problematic behaviors related to food and exercise once kept me imprisoned in body hatred and feeling that I was never enough, not thin enough, fit enough, smart enough, on and on. I listen to my clients in all body shapes and sizes, different genders, life stages, abilities, talents, economic situations, ethnic and religious backgrounds, all struggling with the same basic issues, all describing some version of, I don't do enough, I don't have enough, I'm not enough, or I'm too much. My formal education and training as a dietitian, a licensed clinical social worker, and an eating disorder specialist are a solid foundation, but cannot replace what I learned from my clients. There is no lab test, calculation, or diagnosis that can provide a complete picture of what my clients struggle with and what they need. It is the moments when I listen carefully to their stories and work collaboratively with them that together we find a path forward. My clients are the experts of their lived experience, and they do the hard work. They risk change and the discomfort that comes with it to heal and to grow. Unfortunately, we live and work within systems that often do not support this kind of approach. As I witness clients grappling to see what their bodies do for them, to accept their bodies and themselves as imperfect and still worthy of respect and ideally love, I can stay strong in my own work. At this stage in my life, this work includes seeing my increasingly gray hair as hard-earned silver streaks, my wrinkles as reflections of laughter and deep thinking, my skin discolorations as memories of time spent outdoors in the sunshine, and my squishy belly as a connection to all the women in my family whose bodies looked like mine in their later years, and above all, to appreciate the things that really matter. My relationships with my partner, my family, my colleagues, friends, clients, and this amazing community. My work that gives me a sense of purpose, and being a mentor in Womentum's current cohort. Good representation from the cohort tonight, too. I value my time spent playing outside and roaming the neighborhood with my sweet 14-year-old black lab, Judy. I would trade none of what matters most to me for a different body. My hope is that tonight sparks something in each of you that helps you connect to your own power. If our stories resonate with you, and maybe even make you feel angry, frustrated, confused, or any other raw and uncomfortable emotion, harness that energy and use it to fuel changes. Or use that energy to shift your thinking toward what makes you feel strong, confident, what brings you joy, what makes you feel calm, hopeful, loved, cared for. What do you care most about at your core?
Thank you, ladies, for, yes, keep your mics on, for sharing your stories so bravely with us tonight on the stage. I'm just in such admiration of you all, and I know there's many more stories out there tonight, so I'm excited to now start our Q&A portion. So again, we have a number on the screen where you can text messages for our panelists. We will do our best to get to as many of them as possible. So with that, I am going to get started with our first question, and I think we can keep this fairly open, so if anyone would like to jump in and take the question, and we could probably have multiple viewpoints for each question too if you did. I love that our first question came from a teen. I can just reflect back to my teen years, and they were fraught with body issues. So the question is, as a teenager, how do we learn to not be influenced by the people around us and their comments? I personally find this really difficult as a teenager, constantly feeling like I need to stop eating, look a certain way because of comments from peers or what I see on social media when I'm trying to do what feels best for my body. I'll just start by saying, it doesn't stop when you're a teen. That's something that adults deal with too. So thank you for that question.
I'll start because I think role models are number one, and parents can be the most amazing role models for their kids. Oftentimes we don't think our kids are paying attention to us changing in the changing room or making comments about our food, or any, the food comments, the body, the clothes we're wearing. So I would start there as a parent, and I'm hearing, yes, I understand this is coming from a teen, but having your parents be those role models for you.
I just have a thought that I tell every client. Your body size, your food choices, your relationship status, your reproductive status, it's no one's damn business. And every time somebody makes a comment, they have violated your boundary. And it's up to you if you feel comfortable or not setting a boundary with them. I've found the people that are hardest to set boundaries with are friends and straight colleagues, like work colleagues. But all I can tell you is that, like I said, when I was 14, that's when the shame really started. And I had an appointment with my therapist in 2022, and I realized how long I held on to it. And something to remember is if somebody is making a comment about your body or your food choices, especially if you're a teenager, they're actually showing you their relationship with themselves and their body, and it's usually not pretty. So that helps me not take things so personally when someone violates my boundaries. It does happen as you get older. But because we get older, we recognize that it comes from this place of insecurity, but still, it's none of their damn business, either way.
I'm going to add just one more thing too, and this comes from from actually media literacy, and that is is noticing, like when someone makes a comment that makes you feel uncomfortable, or you find yourself comparing yourself to someone else, whether it's food, or your body, or your athletic performance. Believe it or not, just noticing that what's going on and consciously processing it in your mind is going to help you to be less impacted by that. I mean, if you look at the billions of dollars that have gone into advertising, what we've learned from that is the most effective marketing that's out there is the ones that you don't think about. Like there's kind of, you just kind of take in the message and then without processing it consciously, and it's more likely to impact your behavior. And then, in case of marketing, make you buy something. So yeah, it's uncomfortable and not something that any of us want to have to deal with, but just being able to be conscious of it can also help you, even if it still feels uncomfortable.
I just want to acknowledge too that a part of this question was, I'm just trying to do what feels best for your body. Good for you.
Yeah.
Keep that up. You're keeping it up. We're all trying to do that. Okay, next question. How do you address a male coworker who makes comments about women's appearance in a way that he thinks is supportive?
Well, I'll just tell you, I felt in grad school with my thesis advisor, who was a male, who made regular comments about that. I guess I didn't recognize that it was wrong, and I grew up with a mother who told me that that was what made me valuable, right? So I was supposed to take it as a compliment. Recognize it's not a compliment, it's inappropriate, and if it's impacting your work, it's time to say something. That's easier said than done. I guess I would, anytime I want to set a boundary with somebody, I think the best way to do it is to ask permission, to say, hey, something has come up that's made me uncomfortable in the workplace. Don't do this around other people. Do this privately. And say, is it okay if I share it with you right now? And the reason I say that, because if you at least ask permission, you can soften somebody a little bit and give them the opportunity to learn. But if it's the first time this person's ever had this boundary set with them, they've been doing this throughout their life, especially as a male, it might take some time, and your boundary might be violated a few times. But stand firm, that's all I can say, because as a woman, all of us have been reduced to our appearance, no matter what we look like, no matter what size we are, and it's inappropriate. I don't make those comments about dudes at work, so I just really don't want them, I just want to do my job, and I don't want to be reduced to a pair of legs, or blonde hair, or anything else. I just want to take care of my clients.
I'll also add that I think you can also just do a pivot to say, actually, I'd really be excited to share with you about this project that I've finished, and I put a lot of time and effort into it, or a big presentation that you've got coming up, or maybe you crushed it on the ski hill this weekend. You can pivot to something that actually is a reflection of you and the hard work that you're trying to be known for and you're putting in. So thank you for that question.
There's also something you would say. If they say you're beautiful or something else, you go, thanks, and I'm smart too.
I was just going to add to that. Personally, I've had to set boundaries even with friends. I had one friend say, oh, well, now that we're in menopause, I've read we need to do the Noom diet. Or, do you want to do this fast with me? And I have to pretty much just stop them and set my boundaries of saying, we can't talk about those things because that is a trigger for me questioning everything I have learned in the last few years. So setting boundaries it's hard, and the more you do it, the easier it does become. But it's so important to protect yourself and to stand up for what you believe.
I like that they call it building your body image resilience muscle. It is. It's truly a muscle. And the more we use it, the stronger we get.
Okay, next question. How do you get over food anxiety? Sometimes it feels like I have to eat to get through the moment, and it turns out to be binging. What are your best tips?
I'll take a stab at it. So I think one of the things that surprises clients that I work with who struggle with binge eating, or what I call subjective binge eating, which might be eating foods they just prefer not to eat, but maybe not in binge quantities. What a lot of people don't realize is that the majority of that type of eating is in response to your body not getting enough. It's in response to some form of restriction, whether that's conscious or unconscious. And then sometimes it's also just a rebellion because you've been told certain types of foods are off limits, or you need to have rules around them. So when you finally get in a place where you can freely eat that food, you're going to eat more of it. So when I have clients that come to me, especially with binge eating, they're terrified of the binging, and that's what they want to work on first. You can't really start there. You have to start with whatever the restriction is.
I would say having some structure throughout your day, and I'm not saying this like have rules, but eating consistently, it seems so counterintuitive because as women we've been taught to feel ashamed for even feeling hungry at all. But I had a history of binge eating, and the way I explain it to people, it's like you're trying to hold your breath for a really long time. And we can't do that because we need air to breathe and live. The same thing is true with food. So the longer you restrict, especially if you're like me, like what I was doing, like under fueling around activities, skipping that post-workout meal or snack, and then just sitting down and not being able to have any kind of mindful experience, it would be very different if you had woken up and had breakfast, had a pre-workout, pre-ski snack, had snacks on the skin track or out at the resort, had a post-ski snack, and then sat down. It would be a very different experience because your brain wouldn't be gasping for air.
Okay, next question. How do we teach children to speak to themselves in a loving way? This commenter did offer the 4 agreements. Be impeccable with your word, take nothing personally, make no assumptions, always do your best. Looking through life through this lens is powerful. I agree with that. I would also love to hear from our panelists, what are your thoughts on how do we teach children to speak to themselves in a loving way?
Then talk to you. I would say set an example. So the best way to teach your children is just to don't talk badly about yourself and say positive things. And when you see other people, say positive things. My aunt and my mother have pretty severe mental illness, and they used to go to the mall to sit on a bench and people watch and say terrible things about people. Getting that kind of example as a small child is normal. So I think just setting a good example.
And there's actually research that shows that mom and dad have the most influence over the way kids feel about their bodies. So more than anything, anybody else, friends, on the schoolyard, anywhere, it really is parents that set the best example.
I'll also offer that this also applies to adults, and if you've been in a social setting with me and you might be talking down on yourself, I'll be like, hey, don't talk about my friend that way. So kind of like Chris was saying, and setting boundaries with her friends, I think it's important to set what language is okay and what's not. It was funny, as all of these panelists showed up tonight, we were so excited to see each other, and we naturally said, oh, you look so great. Oh, I'm supposed to say that. And that's one thing that I love of reframing is if you haven't seen somebody in a long time, don't make a comment on their weight or their appearance, because you don't know what might have been happening in their life. And a change may or may not actually be a good thing, so you don't know what's behind that. And so something that I've heard said that I love is, it's so good to see you. How are you? And I mean, maybe if they've got an awesome bracelet like Billy does, or some fun shoes, you can comment on those too, but really trying to steer the conversation away from our bodies. Any other thoughts there, ladies?
What if you don't mean it as that, though?
Sometimes, like, even though we don't mean to cause harm, we do cause harm.
Okay.
So I mean, I would tell you that my mother is that person that would give body affirming comments, and I have had to say many times, hey, I know you mean that as a compliment, but it's not helping. And I mean, that comes from like I had to set a lot of boundaries with my mother, but just because you don't mean harm doesn't mean you're not causing harm. And just like Kristen said, you do not know what you are reaffirming. Like, we don't know.
Our next question for Kelly: how do you implement health at all sizes when a patient's weight may be contributing to true health hazards, such as they've developed type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease?
Good question. So this has been probably like the biggest shift in my life, was the kind of story I told tonight. As I was like going through all of these, like shifting my nutrition advice and everything, I actually like went through a time where I like really wouldn't give nutrition advice because I was like, I don't even know what's right anymore. Like, I don't believe what I've been taught. I feel like I'm hurting people. I know I've given the wrong advice. And you can't argue that, like, certainly unhealthy eating habits can lead to certain types of diseases. And I think that it's more for me, it's the approach. So like, giving someone a weight goal or something like that is never helpful. Like, that's never going to be the answer. I don't weigh my patients unless they have heart disease and like are on heart failure medications, or their children for antibiotic dosing. If we do a weight, it's a blind weight. I try to do that, and there are certain things like having a BMI frequently will end up in a note of mine because I actually can't bill for a visit without having it. If you just told me you wanted to come and talk about your weight, I can't bill for that. So like, I actually have to put BMI on there, but I would never put like the, I don't know, there's all these things. I can order, like I can't get health fair labs for you because those aren't covered by insurance. But if your BMI is 26, I can get it covered. So like, there's things like that that like incredibly influence, I think, the way that we practice medicine in harmful ways. And sure, I can sit there with you and be like, you come in and want to talk about your weight and everything, and I'll usually be like, well, let's look at your labs. It looks like, oh, like maybe they have sleep apnea. Maybe this person does have type 2 diabetes. Maybe they have a normal BMI and they've got type 2 diabetes, I don't know. But then how do we approach those as the disease itself? So it's not about the weight, it's about, okay, what can we add to your diet? If we're adding enough protein in the morning and we're adding veggies, and the first thing you're having are these things, then you can have whatever you want, but I don't want you like having that on an empty stomach. And by like adding protein and adding exercise, then you take away that component of restriction. And so for me, I've gone more into that direction, and then a lot of times it's knowing my limitations. I have 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe. Like these women here, I refer people out all the time because I can't fix your gout and your blood pressure and have like, you know, the 10 years of therapy that might be needed because of all the trauma that's come up in your life. And so I would just say it's like an incredibly personalized, intentional approach, because I am trying really hard not to trigger people in a system that's not designed for that kind of care. And I don't have the time for it, and I spend a lot more time on it than I should, and I stay up late doing notes, and I've burned myself out trying to work in a system that isn't set up for helping people in the way I want.
Thanks, Kelly. Our next question is, if we've already introduced the concept of good foods and bad foods, in quotation marks, to our kids, how do we take it back? What are the next steps? Trick question.
Well, the first thing you can do is just stop using those words. But one thing that I think Mary and Tanya and I would tell you is that we stopped using those descriptors because those imply morality, right? I'm a good person, I'm a bad person. But the truth is, you're not a worse person just because of the way you age. You're a worse person because of the way you treat people. So one thing I would recommend is to remove the moral language and start saying nutrient dense, less nutrient dense. And like I said, all foods provide some sort of value, whether that's joy, nostalgia, or antioxidants. There's all these different things to foods, and if you can start describing them in a neutral way, and something I do with my clients when it comes to like, how do I build a balanced snack? Was I ask them, what do you want? What can we add to that? And just keeping it neutral, because your kids are listening. And like I said, I picked up on that when I was 3. So once you start shifting that language, I think you can start kind of undoing those thoughts without necessarily having to have a conversation with the child unless you want to. But you can say, you know, I'm sorry for some of the language I've used. I'm going to start using this instead, and this is why. Because you're not a worse kid because you ate an Oreo.
And I guess I'll just add to it. I think that for a lot of parents, especially when they have their kids are developing some disordered habits, and so they're trying to educate themselves about this, and all of a sudden there's this fear of saying and doing the wrong thing. And I get it. That makes sense. It's understandable, and you're human. And I think that when you can talk with your kids openly and honestly, in an age-appropriate way, of course, if your kids are too young, they're going to be really concrete, black and white thinkers. They're not going to really understand some of the concepts that we're talking about tonight. But I think it's okay to change track. I mean, you probably do it with other things too, right? There might be things that social media use, or things that we as we get more information, we have to change the way we parent. And so I think this is just another example of that. And so, realizing too that even if you can change the language at home, they're still going to get the good and bad food thing every time they go on social media or when they go anywhere. So, but doing it at home, as Tanya said, first of all, parents have a very big impact on kids and teens, even though teens won't admit it. And so it's important for home to be a safe space, and that includes with food and with bodies are as well.
All right, well, I think those are all of our questions. I did just want to close by sharing the experience that I've gotten to have, that Elizabeth and I have gotten to have, getting to know these panelists. And I think they are proof of what is possible, because hearing them talk about how they love helping their clients thrive, and they themselves are going through life having a happier experience. That's the promise of this relationship that we can change with ourselves and then with our communities. So I'd like to leave you with that thought, and you may be wondering what's next. So we do have some resources that these panelists have shared that will be out in the lobby. They will also be available to answer any questions. I'm sure they would love to hear your stories if you have one you'd like to share. We are planning to do a follow-up, hopefully with a good recording, thank you, Mahela, as well as some resources for y'all for attending tonight. So with that, I'd like for you to join me in thanking these panelists for sharing.